think so.
Okay, good. Well, welcome
Connect to the
everyone.
Wi-Fi network. You might want to check the connection settings in the Google Home app.
Welcome everyone to our first ICB meeting of 2023. I hope we all have a great year together, and I hope you all enjoy the holidays. Anyway, we have a pretty interesting schedule here today. First thing we have to do, though, is we have to approve the minutes. So I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'm happy to make that motion.
And second it.
Second.
I'm yes, and I just wanted to say that I have no problem with the substance of the minutes, but there are an awful lot of misspellings and typos and so forth that still need to be.
That's been pointed out to the author, and she's going to fix that. But anyway, it was all, but no problem. Yeah, I did notice that my name was not spelled correctly, so that was.
I thought it had a nice flair to it, John. Mr. Milguier.
Anyway,
I
so-
apologize for that.
no problem, Carolyn.
Sorry.
I'm sure we'll get there. Anyway, so could we? So all those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Thank you. Good. So let's get started here with Beth Cashel.
Okay, thanks. Happy New Year, all. I want to start with some updates from the town. The first update is regarding the DMV on Fisher's Island. The town board has passed a resolution in support of having DMV services provided on Fisher's Island. This resolution enables a representative, which will be me, to offer DMV services on Fisher's a few times a year. This will not provide on-island driving tests. The location will be at the community center. And during the 1031 meeting, the community center was discussed as a possible location for DMV transactions, and the director, Staley Sinawi, very kindly offered to provide space and the necessary support. So thank you very much to the community center on behalf of the town and the entire island. The two types of options that were discussed in terms of having a DMV service were a permanent space and or a mobile site. Given the frequency or the infrequency, if you will, and the space limitations at the community center, a mobile solution was chosen. The processing and the camera workstations would be portable laptops. The camera in this setup is designed to be installed temporarily each time the equipment is used. It will also be able to be stored in a mobile box and stored securely, so it works well for what we need here on Fisher's Island. The DMV's Division of Field Investigation staff will assist in ensuring that the correct security measures are in place. Confirming with the community center security and connectivity questions. We'll be doing that soon. And once we have confirmed some of the questions that are outstanding and they are resolved and approved by the state, then the equipment will be ordered. Currently, I will be the designated official overseeing the DMV on Fisher's Island. However, the town has agreed to fund a staff to man the additional DMV on Fisher's. The details have yet to be confirmed. The timing of the DMV operations will likely to be 1 or 2 days a quarter, but that also will be to TBD. The next meeting that I will be having with the DMV is actually this week, in which time we will be going over more details. I hope to have more specifics and possibly the opening dates by next month.
Beth, will we have will we have a local man the office for the DMV here on Fisher's?
I'm sorry, I thought that's what I just
Oh,
discussed.
so that's what you know, but I understood that you're going to hire.
Well, we are, I am the designate, and who is going to be manning the actual operations has yet to be determined.
Okay, okay.
So,
But most likely somebody from the community.
well, that is the staff that I will be hiring. Yes.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, great.
Yeah, it's not going to be, John, I see, it's not going to be someone from DMV coming in. No.
Okay,
The
okay, got
DMV
it.
designate is actually me, I guess.
Okay,
But it will be, we'll be getting some local, because you need about 2 people to operate a session. So there'll needs to be 2 people a time. And obviously, if someone is on vacation or gets sick, you need to have someone to be backup. So at times I could do it, but yes, we will be reaching out. I have to confirm with Scott and the town to understand the funding on that and make sure
Okay.
that has been approved.
okay,
But
good. Good job. Good job. Thank you. Okay,
The next update is on the highway department.
okay,
As many of us know, that there's a new highway superintendent in town, Dan Goodwin. And what we have noted so far, he is really working closely with the town engineer, Mike Collins, to review townwide, so not just on Fishers, but townwide, all the infrastructure, highways, sidewalks, to determine the most efficient path forward. And he really is in the process of stressing systematically to review and approach these issues. To that end, Gordon Murphy and I had a meeting in December with Dan and Mike, and we asked a few questions. Gordon Murphy, by the way, is on the sidewalk committee for the ICB. One of the questions we asked was, what is the road and sidewalk repair budget for the town of Southold? And then correspondingly to Fishers. And the response was, the annual repaving is funded with $600,000 in capital funds from the town. The bulk of the town's paving budget comes from the state in the form of 4 different reimbursement programs. That funding is not allotted really until July based on previous years. Dan would expect this to be in the about 750,000 to 800,000 K range, making our total paving budget for the year 1.35 million. That's townwide, just to be clear. The sidewalk repair replacement money for the entire town was once again funded this year, and that was funded with bonded money and at about 250,000. So again, that's townwide for sidewalks. Currently, there is no separate breakout for Fishers paving and previously or sidewalk projects. Previously, the sidewalk projects were handled by the engineering department, and the money was allocated with its own budget line. Going forward, this is how Dan would like to approach the funding request in the future, so that there is a specific line for Fishers Island, so we can know exactly what's been funded, what's been spent, and that also that going forward, that money rolls over. Currently, that's not the case. The sidewalk budget for the whole town is 250,000. So there is no sidewalk budget for Fishers Island for this year.
excuse me, Beth, I wanted to say, I actually spoke to Dan about 10 days ago, and he suggested that we become more active on exactly what our priorities are on sidewalks and roads.
I know,
So-
I actually, yeah.
So I
So
wanted.
would you let me, if I
Yeah,
could
go ahead, go
finish,
ahead.
I might
Go ahead,
actually
go
point
ahead.
that out.
Okay,
The second point was, what if any roads or sidewalks have been identified for repair on Fishers? And what is the timing for this work? There have been several identified. However, Dan is looking for feedback with respect to sidewalks, to your point
Mhm.
that you made, John.
Yes.
It is a balancing act between drainage work, repaving, and sidewalks. Unfortunately, the complication is that one of the 3 typically cannot be done without the other. So Michael and Dan have been to Fishers Island on multiple occasions and are working on a variety of things behind the scenes to build the network and the infrastructure needed to pull these upgrades off. Things such as relationships with vendors and even equipment to simplify getting the needed supplies delivered to the island for installation. While not guaranteed, the town is hoping to be able to work on several drainage projects on Fishers Island this year. The sidewalk work is likely not to come until afterwards, but they're looking to identify them in the 2023 and to be able to request separate funding for work in 2024. The paving then would be scheduled once the first two items on any given road have been completed. So, for example, what they're speaking about is the way they're going to approach it is a layering, 3 layers: drainage, sidewalks, and paving. Why? Well, if you go in to fix a culvert and you have to tear up the road and sidewalk, doesn't it make sense to start there and then follow through? And so Dan is trying to do that. And so the drainage projects will be the first part of a 3-part layering system as needed to fix, then the sidewalks, then the roads. A few areas that the town engineer and the highway superintendent identified during their visits were Fox and Bell Hill, northwest of Fox, by the baseball field, and Avenue B. In the process of prioritizing the projects, they will prioritize them again with input from the island, then create estimates, and then they will get the budget. As everyone will remember, the budget comes at a certain time of the year. We need to start thinking about them in the summer because the budgets get finalized in the fall. So basically, we should consider and plan that sidewalks will be worked on probably every 3 years in a 3-year cycle. Again, to be redundant, but really to get the point across, the layering process is drainage, sidewalks, paving. And again, to emphasize what Dan is hoping in our meeting, and I think Gordon would agree, they have been really cooperative. They spent an enormous amount of time discussing the process. They really want Fisher's input. They really want to work with us, and they really understand our concerns, hence the reason for putting down a Fisher's Island budget line going forward. So he would like the island's input on the priority projects. And also they want us to try and maintain a systematic approach by continuing what has already been started. And again, in the context, though, of needing to first deal with drainage and issues like that. So before I go on to some other issues, John, since you met with them a little bit more frequently, was there anything else that you have to add that he?
No, I'm just pleased that it sounds like there's a good dialogue going on with Southold. And I think that Gordon is going to be helpful because I hear Mike Collins stays with him when he comes to the island. So they have a good relationship. And I think they're going to pay hopefully more attention to us in the next few years. So anyway, but Beth, thank you for your input and thank you for establishing that dialogue with them.
No, he's since Dan came in, he's been really cooperative. I don't know if any of you met him when he was here for the town at the town meeting. But he is, and anytime I have reached out to him, he responds immediately. So he really is a great team player. Okay, another issue that's coming up that some of you may know about, many may not, is the trooper housing, the barracks. The barracks, as many of we've spoken about before, is in needing great repair and is no longer in any condition for any trooper to live as a house. It will be utilized as an office, but not as housing. In fact, the troopers, it was in such disrepair that we almost lost our state police coverage. So what the town did to rectify that was they rented a house year round for the troopers. It's Canio's house behind where Spofford and Lusker's building is, if any of you sort of know where that is. So they have rented that house year round. The town has, Fisher's Island, but the town has paid for that and they will stay there. In the meantime, the town will be getting plans made and estimates determined, and then needing budgeting and funding in order to repair the barracks. So hopefully by next summer, so not this summer, but the summer of 24, hopefully they will be back in the barracks. But if not, I suspect they will continue to rent the house that they're renting year round. I think previously that house might have been rented by some seasonal employees. I'm not 100% sure. Another issue that many we're all waiting to hear about is the seawall and that road that is blocked because of the seawall. That is a pretty complicated issue. And the town is working on it. And it's, again, as I explained, long range, complicated issue, having a lot of issues, and that it will not be completed this summer. So that is just, everyone should be aware that that will still be blocked this summer. Also, there have been some questions. Some of you may have noticed an announcement that was for a snowplow hire. And some people asked in the community, rightfully so, why are we hiring the town when we have 2 town employees working for the highway department here on the island? Why are we contracting out? To answer that question, the town, Fisher's Island, is actually down an employee here on the island, as Chris Aiello went to work for FIDCO. And additionally, since the lone town employee left, who is Jamie, he doesn't work on the island. So he lives on the mainland. I mean, he works on the island. He lives on the mainland. So we do not have a person to plow on the island if snow comes on a weekend or at night. Additionally, the town and we like to have 2 people on when we're doing that. So the highway superintendent, Dan Goodwin, has determined that for now, the most efficient way to clean the Fisher's Island roads is to hire an island contractor. To my knowledge, this is meant to be a stopgap plan. However, I would say that the community may want to follow up and just keep on top just to make sure that the town does have a long-term plan to hire a permanent on-island person. So that is my update for this month.
Well, thank you, Beth, for your always thorough reports. I'm not sure what we should do about the snow plowing at this point. It sounds
I don't
like
think there's anything we should do. I just think I've noted it, so I know to follow up on it. I just think it's great to have it's a good plan for this winter, but going forward, I would hope that we get another employee who's an on-island employee. The plan, I think, is to do that, but it's always good to follow up.
And there's a question from Diane Curry. What about paving for roads that do not have or need sidewalks? But you've already really addressed that, where it's all about prioritizing and when it's in the budget, right? I mean, there's nothing.
Well, because drainage would still exist, drainage issues would still exist for a road, whether it has a sidewalk or not, correct? Because there's going to always, so drainage will still be part of that layer. Maybe in that layer, there's not a sidewalk, but it's still a drainage. And the way they're investigating it right now is they're looking at it from a drainage point of view. But short answer is there is no paving. We all can pretty much guarantee there's no paving on any roads this year.
This coming year. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Beth, as always. Good. So next we have on our agenda, we have Jim Ingram and George Geminil from the Fisher's Island Fund, representing the Fisher's Island Fund. So Jim, why don't you take it away here?
I think George would like to start.
Okay.
We sort of thought that Fisher's Island Fund is a new charitable fund that was launched last December, and that's intended to support projects that directly affect living conditions on the island. And our first effort has been and is to look at energy, and to look at energy really with 2 questions in mind. One is, can we limit at all the rising cost of energy for islanders? And the other is, can we increase the sustainable sources of the energy that's used? And I think I'm going to jump a little bit ahead because but I think it's not, it's fair to say that I think that it's possible that there may be a qualified yes answer for both of those questions. But it's clear that in order to get a handle on the issues, that we need to know more about what our energy usage is, and in particular now, what the potential benefit for Fisher's Island of recent legislation is. Now, that's a tall order. That means doing energy audits, and that's not simple to do. Fortunately, the Fisher's Island School has stepped up, and they're willing to help. Chris Arsenault and Adam Murray have agreed to make an energy audit of resident homes on the island, at least a couple of them, an option for independent study for an 11th or 12th grader in the high school. Even more fortunately, Caleb Seberg, a 12th grader, has volunteered as our first person to do one of these audits, and in fact to work with Jim Ingram, who has been preparing this and really researching the question, putting together the material with incredible amount of energy. Jim, go with it.
Thank you, George. In our conversations with people on the island, we haven't encountered anyone who doesn't kind of support the objective of sustaining the island environment. And by the way, if anyone would like to talk about it face to face, I'm available on the island or by email or whatever to discuss it fully. And sustainability probably means switching to electricity from fuel oil and propane and gasoline. For those of you who think that the generation of electricity is still not great for the environment, you might be interested in a number. Fisher's Island Electric Company buys its electricity from Groton, as everyone knows, who buys it from CMEC, a cooperative of municipal utilities in Connecticut, which buys it from the New England grid. The New England grid buys it from various sources, among them Waterford Nuclear, Quebec Hydro, Cape Cod Wind. So today, the mixture of energy sources that make up the electricity consumed on the island is about 47% non-fossil fuel. I don't know whether that number will surprise you. It surprised me. And it is projected by 2030 that mix will be 75% non-fossil fuel. So when I say switch to electricity, it is going to be planned to be very sustainable. But of course, on island solar is 100% non-fossil fuel, and it could arrive long before 2030. But pursuing energy efficiency is expensive, and while there exists today federal and state assistance toward energy efficiency, but it isn't accessible to Fisher's Islanders. For example, the fact that the island buys electricity from Connecticut, but is served by a New York State utility is a complication. In addition, at some point in the past, a decision was made that the Fisher's Island Electric Company subscribers would not contribute to a New York State fund. I don't know the basis of that decision. If you look at a Con Ed bill, they pay what looks about $4 a month. But as I say, in the past, a decision was made for Fisher's Island subscribers not to contribute, and as a result, are frequently not eligible for the existing New York State programs. And the problem with that is that, as you're quite well aware, in the summer, Biden's famous Inflation Reduction Act was passed, and in it is major incentives for energy efficiency, and it is the way that program will be administered is it will be regulations will be developed, but they'll be passed to New York State, and New York State will develop its own approach, and the agency that will develop that approach is the agency that is funded by this surcharge that Fisher's Island subscribers do not pay at this point. So
excuse me, Jim, it sounds to me like we should ask the utility company. They must have a reason why they haven't been contributing.
Yeah, and there, it could easily be as simple as that they didn't see how it would be benefit. It's cheap, but it's not. But it exists, and so they may well be. At the same time, we might ask, if it could be reconsidered.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. We'll do that.
If it were a benefit. But the point being is that these existing programs are just not very accessible. They're complicated, and it's not always clear that Fisher's Islanders would be eligible in any event. But as I said, this summer, this new very generous program. For example, what's included is a continuation of 30% tax credit for solar, heat pumps, electric cars, weatherization, upgrades to your electric panel, and those are not gated by income. They're available to anybody at any level of income. They are not capped. There's 30. It can be 30% of a lot. Maybe cars are gated, and it turns over every year. So that 30% is good for 10 years. That's a pretty good incentive. For households, this new legislation for households that are 80% of the Suffolk County area median income. I know this is complicated, but I don't know whether you know what the area median income is for Suffolk County. It's $112,000 a year. So residents of Fisher's Island whose income is less than that, which is about 90,000, are eligible for 100% rebates on a substantial number of energy-related activities. For example, $8,000 rebate at point of sale, not a tax credit, which you get next year. $4,000 for a new electrical panel, which is often required if you install heat pumps, for example. Anyway, it's quite generous. So that's the origin of the Fisher's. One of the origins of the Fisher's Islands Fund was to examine that legislation, try to understand as much as possible about how Fisher's Island residents could become eligible. And it appears after examining it, that energy audits often are prerequisites. We're not clear that they will be in the future insisted upon, but we wouldn't be surprised. We think so. At the moment, there's no one on the island who is certified to provide energy audits. It's not that no one is qualified. It's just that there has not been any need, and no local contractor has seen it in their interest to pursue it. But so we decided that would be one activity we could undertake in the short term, which was to provide some audits and to work on developing a longer term capacity for auditing on the island, on the basis that that might become a prerequisite to Fisher's Island residents benefiting. So we created this internship and recruited a bright young man who I had hoped we would be able to introduce on this Zoom meeting, but I don't see him yet. He is he is a student at Fisher's Island School, Caleb Seaberg, and he's on the ferry. Probably he's off the ferry at this point. And I assume he could not make the connection. So he's a delightful young man. He's applying for college, as most seniors are. He hopes to go to
So Jim, in the meantime, can you tell us briefly what an audit entails? And I mean, it sounds to me like the more concrete examples you can give us, if you go through this audit and you end up really getting credits from the government, this would resonate with the community. So, the more concrete examples of this actually translating to credits to homeowners would be very helpful.
Jim,
Jim,
if I could just say a word, Jim is very prudent in what he says, but before Caleb and Jim have gone to work on we actually have several families who have expressed an interest in having audits. Jim has done a trial audit on a home here on Fishers, and the renter has not yet had a chance to discuss with the owner the results. But the results, I've seen the audit, it's quite impressive. There are 30 pages of numbers and pictures and so forth. And Jim, just a one number you gave us.
Yeah, we looked at the house. It's not as well. It is. We use a couple of interesting devices, tools. That one's called a blower door. You might be interested in. You literally put up a temporary door in the front of the house, and in it mount a big fan and blow all the air out of the house. And what that does is allow you, using a candle, a smoke gun, to identify leaks. All houses have leaks, often through the attic, through the electrical outlets, through ceiling lights, around the windows and doors, through the fireplace. We use a thermal camera, which will show differences in temperature, and you can see, for example, in the ceiling where the insulation is collected and become compressed. Anyway, we did this audit. We identified all of those problems in this house. In addition, the house uses fuel oil for heating. And we did an analysis which would indicate that the savings between the cost of fuel oil and the cost of electricity to drive a heat pump would be in the order of $3,000 a year, and that the break even with the investment, including the incentives that we think are available, is about 3 years. That's a very attractive conclusion, I think. And I'm hoping that when the person who received the audit is, has looked at it, that they would agree to allow me to make some of that information available so people can see for themselves.
If I could just also, an investment man like you, John, knows that that is equivalent to a 24% roughly annual rate of return on your investment. And again, I think it's worth emphasizing that the incentive was not, in this particular case that Jim estimated, was not influenced by income. It is not income gated. So this is, among other incentives, an incentive which would be available to anyone on Fisher's Island who pays taxes. Those who don't pay taxes can probably get even more incentives. So I think that one of the answers, and I mean, one of the observations is that this bipartisan bill that was passed last summer has got an awful lot of incentives in it, and Fisher's Island ought to be able to benefit from some of this.
I agree, George and Jim. So I think we should definitely approach the utility company and discuss this thoroughly and see what kind of options we have and what is worth pursuing. And I think, Jim, do you have anything else to add for now?
No, I really don't. I'm sure Dick Miller raised this issue about the mandate, which I had also read, Dick, from the governor to eliminate fuel oil and propane to a great degree by some a relatively short period. And the island is moving in that direction. I don't know whether you know it or not. I know of at least 50 heat pumps on this island already that are installed.
Right.
50,
Well,
and they're being installed. So, whether we do anything about it, things are changing. And I think George and I and others feel that, if we inform ourselves, we can probably make that transition profitable and smoother.
well, Jim and George, thank you for the effort. I think it could be very helpful in the future. And the more information we have, the more we'll be able to give concrete advice to people about what they might do. And, because of course, it affects everybody differently. If you have your house shut down in the winter, it's not that economical to do this. But if you're a year-round resident, it's probably definitely worthwhile looking at heat pumps. But in the meantime, let's continue that conversation for another meeting, because I got Tom Sargent, who has a hard stop here, and I want him to get on and talk about the Conservancy, if you don't mind. But Jim and George, thank you for this effort, and we'll include you on the agenda anytime you'd like if there's more news. But I think we should pursue a conversation with the utility company about this as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
First of all, can you folks hear me? I've been having issues with this microphone. You can. Okay, great. So happy New Year, and thank you all, everybody on this phone, for the support you've given the Fisher's Island Conservancy over the years. It's very, very much appreciated. And Jim, I for one am very surprised that number of 47% is from non-fossil fuel sources for our energy, and that actually makes me feel very good, because for obvious reasons, we as a sensitive island community need to be more aware of the fossil fuels that are being released with certainly with rising seas. So thank you for that number. So John just asked me to give a quick overview, and again, we had a great year last year at the Conservancy, and we continue to move forward. For this year, we've got our burn plan in place with the Fisher's Island Fire Department. We'll be getting to that on the parade grounds here in the next 6 to 8 weeks. I see Mr. Edwards leaning forward, so he knows we want to do it sooner than later, as always. And on a positive note, just thinking in 4 weeks, the red-tailed hawks start to migrate and start to breed. So spring really can't be that far away. John asked me to speak a little bit about the dredging that is going to be happening in New London Harbor. We've all been read about. I don't know much more than what has been in the press. That it's an ongoing, has been a long ongoing a confrontation between the state of New York and Connecticut. We filed an amicus brief as the Conservancy via Barry Bryan with Southold and the state of New York a couple of years ago. In September of 2022, the Connecticut Federal Court of Appeals sided with the state of Connecticut to reopen or to designate a dump site in Eastern Long Island Sound, which is the New London dump site, for potentially hazardous or spoils from New London Harbor. To date, no dredge schedule has been posted. There's been a little bit of dredging that has been done around the state pier. Obviously, New London, through the Connecticut Port Authority, New London is a hot site in terms of the state piers being combined from 2 piers into one gigantic pier for offshore wind, being run by Eversource and a Danish company that slips my mind at the moment. And then also, as you know, Electric Boat is under a submarine boom, finishing up the 5 Virginia-class nuclear missile submarines, which are currently, you can see them when you go by on the ferry, and they've also cleared the way for the new Columbia-class, an even bigger nuclear missile submarine, which will be start construction, I think, here in the next 12 to 24 months. So the dredging is there. It's going to be happen. There has to be as I understand it, an environmental protection plan as to what will be taken, what will be allowed to be buried, or spoils will be allowed to be dumped in Eastern Long Island Sound, and what will have to be taken elsewhere. And as of right now, I just want to make clear that it is only the Connecticut side of the New London dump site that will be allowed to be used. And obviously, we work very closely with the ferry district, everything we do. And I can see Mr. Cook is on the line, Jeb is on the line, and he has also been monitoring what's been going on in terms of dredging in our close waters. So Jeb, I'll turn that over to you.
Thanks, Tom. As some of you may notice, if you're going back and forth to the island, there are barges out there, and they have been dredging. And I had, fortunately, I had an opportunity to speak with one of the tugboat operators, and he informed me he was refueling at City Pier, and he informed me that I assumed they were going to the dump site, and he goes, no, we're not going to dump site. We're going down to Bayonne, New Jersey. And I've been tracking those barges, and just at least a couple times a week, if not once a week, there is a tug that's pushing a barge full of dredge spoils all the way down to Bayonne, New Jersey, where they are taking it to a Clean Earth. It's a company called Clean Earth, where the barges are offloaded and the dredge spoils are processed. I don't know what they're being processed for. If they're heavy metals, they're probably being treated with concrete, which neutralizes the lead, and that can be used for alternate purposes like landfill cover. And there's trains and there's trucks and there's everything that can haul those spoils to wherever they're going. And that's what I've been able to track. So I do know that what you see in the Thames right now in terms of barges are going down to New Jersey and being offloaded and treated. And that's
Well,
that's
I have
what
a
we so
question.
far.
I have a question, Jim and Tom. Were we worried that this waste material would go elsewhere or near us, closer to us? Is that, or we're just worried about the effects of the dredging itself and not necessarily where the waste goes?
I think we're more concerned of where the oils are actually going to be dumped. And according to the EPA, they'll be dumped on the New London dump site, which is really sort of funny. It's off Ocean Beach towards Hartness Beach. It's sort of in between the steamer routes for the Cross Island Ferry and us. But they will be dropped there and then they will be capped. Obviously, it's a pretty heavy current area, so we're waiting to hear back the science from the environmental impact statement. But anytime you move anything around in an area like that, there's going to be some drift. So we need to just be aware of. But I think at this stage, with the geopolitical situation in the world, that we're gonna have a tough time, stopping any dredging in New London Harbor with the Electric Boat has 12,500 employees right now. They expect to be up to 22,000 by 2033. So it's it's an active site.
So that the train has left the station, so we just be hopeful that it's not going to affect our waters too much.
I think that's pretty much it, and to keep an eye on it as best we can, and to see what actually takes place, and make sure that they're following their own impact statement.
Okay.
And it's to put it, it's not just us that's watching this. I mean, it's the state of New York, it's Save the Sound, Friends of Long Island Sound. It's a myriad of groups in both Connecticut and New York that are going to watch this very closely.
And the Conservancy has been proactive on this, I think, as you told me, for years, right?
For decades, yes.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do.
Right. Well, thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to talk about Conservancy issues?
No, you'll just see some more improvements. We're going to be doing more improvements with our partners at the Ferry District at Ferry Park, which if you haven't been, walk to. What was it, Jeb? We put in 12,000 plugs of Virginia seagrass there, and it's coming in nicely. It's actually, it's actually full of birds hiding in this wind, and it's great. So please take a look. It's all native, and it's coming along nicely. We'll continue to do what we do in the parade grounds, which is again, just such a wonderful resource, and to see it in its winter light of its ambers and burnt colors is just wonderful. So we'll just continue to do that, and see other areas where we can join and be a benefit to the community as a whole.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. That's great. Great report. Appreciate it. It looks like our last on our agenda was going to be Nate Malinowski, but he can't make it. So I don't know if there's anything else anybody wants to bring up. I wanted to bring up that, which I'm sure everybody's aware, we all received that letter that the community center wrote to the utility company, and we're waiting for both of them to get together and resolve their issues, and we're going to keep the community posted on that once we have some real information, but there's nothing really to add right now. And I think if anything, we're waiting to hear how the Service Commission in New York reacts to the community center complaint. We don't know yet. There's no response yet. Does anybody else have anything to add here? Any questions? Anything in the chat room there? I don't see it. Well, then we're closing early there, Staley. You have anything on your mind there? And we'll have another meeting in February.
Yeah, I think Nate said he'll join in February, and
We'll join in February. Good.
yeah, and maybe February we might be able, the fire department might have something more to report by then.
Right, in the fire department. That's where we've got that in mind too. Yes.
Yeah. And then in the chat room, one person suggested that they would like to see monthly IHP reports, just to give.
Well, we
just to give
did.
a-
I think we both. I asked Chris, and he said that it's really COVID is cases are low, and there's nothing really to report as far as he was concerned. But I'll make him speak next time.
We can circle back in February.
Yeah. Right. Well, good. Well, listen. Thank you, everyone, for joining the meeting, and
there is a question in the chat,
okay.
John.
Go ahead.
What has happened with the school selling the properties?
I'm sorry, one more time.
The question is, what has happened with the school selling properties?
Is Chris Arsenault on the line? I'd rather him answer that one.
I don't think he
I
is.
don't think he is, no. We'll get that information for the next meeting then. Because I don't have the details. We don't have the details on that.
John, George has got his hand raised.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm confused between Tom and Jeb. Tom, you're talking about dredged material being dumped in that site between the Cross Island path and the Fisher's Island path, and Jeb is talking about
Not
material
dump, not dump,
Wyoming.
dredge.
No, no,
What?
that's where the dump is. The New London dump site is in that, you're correct, George. But no dumping none of the dredge spoils that would be done around Electric Boat or the sub base have been dredged yet. The spoils you see now are coming from the state pier, and those are being taken down to Bayonne, New Jersey. Nothing has been dumped in our waters as of now.
But the future work will be dumped in those waters.
That's not guaranteed. That's not guaranteed. What is guaranteed is that as of right now, the Connecticut portion of the New London dump site could be considered as a potential dump site for dredge spoils from the Thames River, New London Harbor.
Thank you.
And as soon as we have a, Jeb's all over it. As soon as we have a dredge schedule, we'll make sure that everybody's aware of it. And as you've already noticed, you've been on the boat, you'll see the barges. So it's sort of something that you can't do in the dark of night.
And before we end this meeting, anybody who wants to please reach out to Jim Ingram about these energy audits or tax incentives, because he's really focusing on this and be very helpful to all of us. Okay.
And I guess also anyone interested also can go to the website, fishersislandfund.us.
Great. Well, thank you all for participating, and see you all in February then.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.